next item on our agenda is item 10A, second reading of Board Policy KA, Public Relations Program. May I have a motion, please?
President Burden.
Mr. Centers.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt board policy language per the attached document for the following. Policy KA, Public Relations Program.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mr. Johnson. And Mrs. Oquist, would you like to address this item?
Yes. I'm going to get that in front of me. Thank you. Excuse me. As you know, thank you. We have, it's part of the Public Relations Program. It is important to us and certainly to the Board of Education that we have an opportunity to hear from folks at community forums. One of the reasons that the district provides this opportunity is so that the board can hear directly from members of community on issues of importance. An example of that most recently would be the budget forums that were held in January. We feel that it is extremely important that to have that more in-depth discussion and have those opportunities from the board. Therefore, one of the things, some of the feedback that we have gotten and are responding to is that the board wishes to create a safe and welcoming environment for people to share that information with us. Therefore, this policy has been modified, Board Policy KA, that there will be no audio or video recording so that stakeholders may feel free to share their thoughts. So again, these are not formal meetings of the board where we would normally be televising the meetings, such as our committee of the whole or our board meetings. And so because these are community forums and because we are not present with the entire Board of Education deliberating on a topic, we would like to provide the opportunity to have those open channels of communication where all of our community members and our stakeholders have the opportunity to share without any concern of being recorded. So this policy illustrates such.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
President Burden.
Yes, Mr. Centers.
As is often the case with our board, I was in the up in Harbor Springs this week taking some courses from Michigan Association of School Boards, and they actually addressed the issue of having focus groups in your community, and they wanted for us to emphasize in our communities eliminating barriers that could cause people to not share their actual feelings. So this is a good example of that. They were talking about a lot of different things. Putting business leaders along with parents, could intimidate people, but this is certainly an example of how it could keep people from sharing their actual feelings. And if the actual intent of these is to get people to openly share as free as possible, then we should try to strive to remove these barriers. So I thought it was very topical, and I thought I'd wanted to share that best practice.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board?
President Burton.
Mrs. McDonald.
Thank you. As I stated at our last meeting when we had our first reading, I am not going to support this evening. I have concerns with the First Amendment rights of individuals, and also for those folks who possibly may not have the opportunity to come to our focus groups, and having a recording then thus would give them the opportunity possibly to view the discussions in our focus groups. So with that, I will not be supporting it. And also, just for future reference, how are we going to determine when it is appropriate and when it is not appropriate for video recording? Just something for discussion.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right. I am supporting this. I feel that it is very, very important for us to not only recognize a few individuals who might want to record private citizens sharing their thoughts for their personal videotaping use, I feel that that desire is overridden by the right of the general public, who do not have to be videotaped. I think it's very, very important that the folks who come to talk to us on a voluntary basis are not subjected to videotaping by other individuals without their permission. For that reason, I am going to be supporting this issue. Again, to reiterate what Mrs. Oquist said, just to be clear, we are not talking about meetings of the Board of Education. When you are an elected member of the Board of Education and you are at a meeting in which there is a quorum present and there is discussion going on or decision being made on public policy, we all put ourselves out for being videotaped. We know that when we sign up. However, this is not that kind of situation. What we're talking about, to be clear, is a community forum when there may be one or two board members present with a small group of private citizens who would like to share their thoughts. We're saying that kind of a setting, we are not going to allow videotaping so that those private citizens have a right to be heard also. I believe it's very, very important to respect the rights of all, not just the rights of a few who want to videotape for their private personal use. For those reasons, I will be supporting this tonight. Mr. Centers.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one thing, and I think
Go right
you put
ahead.
that very well. I would like to say that if someone is listening and they would like to have their opinion recorded and shared on record, they could come to our committee of the whole meetings. They can come to a regular board meeting. Study sessions, again, are not normally videotaped, but if you are someone that wants to have your voice heard on TV, those are the forums for you to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. So we absolutely do provide those opportunities. Thank you, Mr. Centers. Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. I was pleased that Mrs. McDonald mentioned the First Amendment rights because freedom of speech is guaranteed us by the Constitution. If a person is feeling intimidated because they had not anticipated being recorded, then in fact their freedom of speech is being infringed, and that's something that we should in fact be aware of.
Very good point. Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. Are there others who would like to address this issue? Mr. Johnson.
Yes, with regard to the First Amendment issue, we all have to understand that the First Amendment right is that of the speaker, not of the recorder. It's the person making the statement who has the First Amendment right. No one has a First Amendment right to videotape or audio someone else. That's not freedom of speech.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I appreciate the clarification. Are there others who would like to address this issue? Mrs. Bonnefield.
Mrs. Burton, thank you. President Burton, thank you. I've been in one of these situations where we've been in a forum and we've had an individual come in and demand to tape, and they were kind enough to turn their machine off and sit down and participate in the group. But we asked the group, do you want to be videotaped? And it was a response of no for the whole group. And I've been in another situation where a group has come into my forum because they were being, basically there was a demand that the group be videotaped, and they left the room and came to my group in order to be heard. So I think just the actions of those individuals that come to the forum speak very loudly that it is not welcomed, that their rights to speak freely are being infringed upon.
Thank you, Mrs. Bonnefield. Anybody else like to share thoughts on this issue? All righty. We have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Bonnefield, will you please take the roll?
Thank you. Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
No.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.